Okay, hi, welcome to the EpiDoc training tutorials. You can find the full program for these tutorials at the link given at the bottom of the screen or also below the YouTube video. In today's session, Irene is going to talk about the places and locations of the object on which your inscription is found, or papyrus, etc. Irene, please go ahead.
Thank you. So in this session, we are going to deal specifically with two elements, origin place and provenance, which are both inside the manuscript description, inside the TI header, and specifically inside the history section of the manuscript description. So we have the origin place inside origin, and then the provenance just after origin. And this is an example from traditional inscription from the inscriptions of Roma Cyrenaica, in which I have highlighted the relevant part of the information we want to deal with in this session. So we can have different types of location in one inscription, and in this session we're going to deal with the first three of those five. So with the original location, with the Findspot, and with the last recorded location or other the modern location of an inscription. And we can also have a repository, and of course we have the places mentioned inside the text, and you can find more information about how to deal with those two types of places in other videos. So let's start from the original location. For this we use the origin place element, which is inside origin, inside history. And for the place of origin, we can add a ref attribute linking to, for example, a gazetteer or an internal authority list of places of the project itself. In this case, we are linking to the gazetteer of Libya, SLS gazetteer for the beds of Trajan in Cyrene, I think. In the origin place, well, here we have a short definition of the place, so we can add the ref attribute directly to the origin place. But if we had a longer description inside it, we could isolate the actual origin place name with a place name element surrounding just the bit with the name of the place, and adding the ref just to this instead to the origin place, as in this example. And going now to the Findspot, just below the origin, we can add a provenance element, which can have a type attribute. And in this case, for Findspot, we use the attribute value found, so provenance type found for Findspots. And inside this, we usually have a description of the circumstances of the finding of the inscription of our ancient object. And so we have a paragraph with a paragraph describing the finding of the inscription. And inside this, we use a place name, so specifically for the place name. So in this case, we have a Cyrene Roman house and a place name surrounding just this bit of the wider description. And in this case, we are adding here the ref attribute with a link to the gazetteer pointing to this place. And in this description, we have also information about the year when the finding happened. So we can put this information also inside the provenance with an attribute when, in this case. So we have a when specifying the year that we have also inside the description. And how we deal with the last recorded location is very similar to the Findspot. So we are again using a provenance element, but in this case the value of the type attribute changes, so we have observed instead of found. So provenance type observed for recording moments in which the inscription has been seen by someone. And in this case, we have a paragraph, again, as in the previous example, for a description of the circumstances in which this inscription has been seen. So as in the example for the Findspot, again, we have a place name surrounding just the name of the place where the inscription has been seen. And we have a ref attribute, with a link to the gazetteer. And I forgot, in provenance type observed, as in the example before, we can have a when attribute specifying the year when the observation has been made. So this can usually is done for the last recorded location, but of course it can be done for even more locations. So we can have a record of various observation of the inscription during the years, and we can, in this case, we could have more provenance type observed, each with a different value inside when. And as for provenance, we can have different type of values. We have seen now that we can have found for the Findspot and observed for recording an observation of the inscription. But we can have also other two values. We can have also not observed for the case in which someone attempted to see an inscription. He went at its alleged place of conservation, but she wasn't able to see it because it has been lost or stolen, destroyed. It was not there, so not observed for failed attempts of observation. And we can also have transferred for recording a transfer of an item from one place to another. So it has been transferred from, let's say, its Findspot to the museum in which it is currently stored in a specific year, and we can use provenance type transferred for things like that. And all provenance types can have also another, so all provenance can have another attribute beside type. They can have also subtype if necessary, and some values are suggested by the guidelines, by the lists are not should not be strictly followed, so also new values can be used, but some examples are are those that you can see in this slide. So for found, we can specify that it has been discovered or rediscovered or first recorded and so on. And again, we have some suggested values also for the other three categories, but also new values can be specified. And all the places, either if they are in the TI header, so the cases that we have seen now, either if they are inside the text, so mentioned inside the text, and also repositories that we have not seen here, but are still in the TI header, all those places can be linked to authority lists, which can be external, such in the examples that we have just seen, and in the first example in this slide. So we can have a ref pointing to the URL of a place entry inside the gazetteer. For example, it could be Pleiades for ancient places, or geonames for modern places, but also other gazetteers are possible. Otherwise, there is also a possibility of linking to an internal list of places and location internal to a project, a specific project. And in this case, we again, we use the ref attribute, but instead of the URL of the item inside the gazetteer, we point to the entry inside the authority list. So in this case, we have a place.xml, and we are pointing to the element having as XML ID DB001. And I think it's all. Gabby, do you want to add anything?
I'd only one thing actually. If we go back to your previous slide on provenance types, yes, this one. I would only add to this that really in EpiDoc, the only ones we recommend are found and observed. And the only reason to use more is if you want to use different headings in your standard epigraphic edition. If there's a conflict, always a tension rather, between richness of information that you can encode and how you want to lay out your text. If you want to simply lay out your edition and say, this object is from, it was found at, and it is currently at, or last we knew of it was at, and those are the only 3 headings you have, then you really only want to say origin, found, and observed. All these other things are available, but they're not to just be used just because we can. I think you really ought to think carefully about what you want to encode on there. And sort of related to that, there's Irene has also mentioned, and the other presentation on repository mentions as well, that there's maybe not a very good matchup between the way epigraphic editions normally encode current location and the repository or institution that owns an object, and the way this is recorded in TEI, which has those as 2 completely different kinds of information in different parts of the TEI header. Whereas, quite often we just want to say, this object is now in the British Museum, and that's, that's both saying the repository and saying its most recent observed location. And the only thing I'd say in defense, if you like, of the TEI way of doing things is that they are kind of different things, and they can conceivably be different. Something can be owned by the British Museum and given an inventory number by the British Museum, but actually still be in situ in, for example, one of the great parks or something like that. And so the location and the institution can be different things, so they're not necessarily redundant in the way that they are here. How you want to encode that in your output of your epigraphic edition, of course, is another question. But just wanted to sort of make an observation of that slight seeming mismatch, and how we might handle that. But no, right. Otherwise, yeah, that was great.
Thank you very much.
Cool.